Hi guys, thank you all for tuning in and welcome back to Sewing Lara. In today's tutorial I will show you how I made my pumpkin costume. The costume consists of 3 pieces, so it's this cute little hat with a stem and a pumpkin leaf, a top and a puffy skirt. I used a very inexpensive material, a simple velvet that stretches only sideways, and the sewing pattern is available on my homepage for a very affordable price, and it comes as a package in multiple sizes. I will go over all steps pretty detailed, but I will not cover all the basics. If that's something you need to see, I will link a playlist for sewing beginners down below. And now let's jump right into this. So first we're gonna look at the pattern overview. When you print out the pattern overview, you will have there a graphic with how the pattern pieces look like. That's going to make it easier to work with the digital sewing pattern. On the first side, it's listed how many pieces you will need of which fabric for whatever part of the costume, and the second page contains the sizing chart with information about the sizing, the skirt back length, and also the yardage and what material is ideal for this project. And it's really important to read the sizing information because the measurements are of the finished product. We are working with stretchy fabric, and in that case it's much easier to decide on your size when you compare the sizing chart with a piece that is kind of similar, that fits you really well. We're going to start with the skirt. So the skirt consists of 8 pieces. So I have here all 8 pieces. There are always 2 pieces on each other. So this is the wrong side. Here inside we have the right side. On the top we have the waistband and an elastic band. I will be sewing with this orange yarn, and this is for the bobbin. That's a shirring elastic. I'm gonna use it when I'm gonna be sewing the sides of the pieces together in order to create the crunched look. As a first step, I will start pinning all the skirt sections together. I'm gonna align the rounded edges and I'm gonna be pinning them at an angle. Once you pinned all edges together, I personally recommend using first on your bobbin the same yarn that you're using on the top and sewing around the edges with zigzag first, because velvet likes creating a lot of mess and that way it would not fray further. And the next step is create the shirring here so that it would look a little bit puffier, the skirt. There are 2 possibilities how you can do that. Either you will have a gathering foot and you will simply sew with straight stitch and that's gonna gather the fabric a little bit. I personally prefer doing it with a shirring elastic. They come in different colors, so I have at home white shirring and black shirring elastic. So you simply have to wind it on your bobbin, either manually or you do it on your sewing machine if that works. And then you sew around the edge with a straight stitch, and that's gonna ruffle the fabric a little bit, but it's gonna still remain a little bit flexible because it's gonna be different than shirring it with a gathering foot. It's gonna still give in a little bit. Here's what the skirt looks like so far. So thanks to the shirring, it started looking a little bit more puffy so that it looks a little bit like a pumpkin. And this is the bottom. Here we have the top. And the way I want the pieces to be aligned is that I always want to have one piece in the center in the front and one piece in the center in the back, so that I wouldn't have a seam right in the middle. And I made on this part, this is going to be the front, a little cut so that I know where the center is. And I also made a little cut here in the back in order to know where the center is in the back. And I'm going to put one pin here and that's gonna mark the front for me. So I'm gonna put this for now to the side. Now we can start working on the waistband. So I have sewn the loose end of the waistband together with a straight stitch, and I have turned it to the right side. And with velvet, you have to understand that the velvet is kind of fluffy. It has kind of like hair, and when you stroke it from one side, you will notice that it's smooth, and when you stroke it from the other side, you will notice that it's like stroking hair upwards. And it's important that the way you use the fabric is the same for the skirt and the waistband, because it looks a little shinier from one side than when you would turn it. I don't know if you can notice that on the camera. And the way I have the skirt is that when I stroke the fabric upwards, I'm going against the hair. So this is actually exactly how I want the waistband to be aligned. I have sewn together the ends of my elastic band as well. And first I'm gonna mark on my waistband the middle on the other side where I don't have a seam. And now I'm gonna align it like so, still making sure that the direction of the hair is correct. And I'm gonna start pinning the elastic band on the top of this, on the right side. And since I have here the seam and I have here 2 layers of the elastic band, I'm gonna move the seam on the elastic band a little bit further away from the seam on the velvet, because I don't want to have there too many layers of fabric. And I will start pinning it to the velvet like so. You can also do it this way from the inside. Important is that the elastic band is being pinned to the right side on the top. So here is what it looks like. Important is that the edge of the waistband is aligned nicely with the edge of the elastic band. And now I'm gonna sew the elastic band in with stretchy overlock stitch. Here is what it looks like so far. I will later fold the elastic inwards like so, but I'm gonna leave it like that for the time being. The waistband remains turned to the right side. I'm gonna turn it upside down, and I'm gonna make sure that I have here this little cut that marks the front. And here I have my skirt, and this is the front center. I'm gonna align the front center with the front part, with the front center of the waistband. I'm gonna put a pin in. I'm gonna put the waistband inside of the skirt like so. And here I have the seam in the back. I'm gonna fold both seam allowances to the side, and I'm gonna align the seam exactly with the center of the back part. And now I will pin the remaining edge of the waistband to the top edge of the skirt. Here is what it looks like when the waistband has been pinned inside, and I'm gonna sew around the edge with stretchy overlock stitch. There you have it. The waistband has been sewn to the skirt with the stretchy overlock stitch, and now I'm gonna fold the elastic band inwards. Alright, so I have here the waistband, the top. I'm folding the elastic band inwards like so. You can also put in here a pin if that's gonna help you. And here inside we have here the seam that we just created with the stretchy overlock stitch. I'm folding it upwards and placing the elastic band over it like so. And then I'm gonna pin it at an angle from the right side. And I'm gonna do it on several places. Once you folded it on a few places, it's gonna be easier because the fabric is gonna kind of follow. Alright, so here is what it looks like when the waistband has been pinned in. I'm gonna go ahead and sew around the bottom edge here with stretchy zigzag. For the top I'll be using orange yarn, and for the bottom I'll be using black yarn. And here is what it looks like when the waistband has been finished. So here we have it from the inside and from the outside. And the last step is to take care of the bottom. So my plan is just to fold it inwards like so and sew through with the stretchy zigzag, but I'm gonna be sewing in an elastic band, and I'm gonna be stretching the elastic band a little bit out because I want this also to be short on the bottom so that the pumpkin looks really puffy when I'm gonna have the skirt on. For that, I turn the skirt now so that the top is facing upwards, and this is the center back piece. So I'm gonna place the elastic band in here like so, and I'm gonna pin it at an angle here. And what I'm gonna be doing is I'm just gonna turn it like so. I'll be folding the edge of the bottom over the elastic band, and I'll be sewing with stretchy zigzag, and during that I'll be pulling on the elastic band towards me ever so slightly so that the bottom will be ruffled. Let me show you a little bit slower how I do it. So I pull on the elastic band, and before that I always smoothen the edge here and straighten it. Then I fold it over the stretched out elastic band, and then I sew a few stitches. And then I repeat the procedure again. I smoothen the edge, stretch out the elastic band, then I cover it with the edge, sew a few stitches, and so on. And this is what creates this ruffled bottom. And here we have the finished skirt. So here is what the bottom looks like. The more you stretch the elastic band out, the tighter the bottom is going to be. Now that we finished our skirt, we can start working on the top. So let's have a look at the parts first. So here on the right top we have the top back part. Next on the left is the top front part. Here we have the sleeves, the lining for the front and for the back, and this is the bottom front part and the bottom back part. I still have the orange yarn in my sewing machine, so I'm gonna use that opportunity, and I will sew together the bottom parts first with the orange yarn. So I'm gonna pin them together on the sides at an angle. I will sew them together with stretchy overlock stitch, and when I'll be done, I will simply fold the bottom inwards like so, and I will sew through the edge with stretchy zigzag. This is something you have seen so many times on this channel, so I'm just gonna skip that part. The next step is to pin together these two pieces. These are the parts for the top section of the pumpkin top, so I'm gonna pin them here at the sides at an angle. And I will also pin the shoulder parts together. And I will do the same with this jersey. This is just some leftover jersey I still had at home that I'm gonna be using for the lining. Here we have it. And now I will sew everything together with stretchy overlock stitch. Alright, so here we have both pieces when they have been sewn together. I have already turned the green part to the right side, and now I'm gonna grab the lining and I'm gonna pull it over the green part, and I'm gonna align it, especially here around the shoulders. And I'm gonna make sure that here where I have the seam allowance on the shoulders, that one seam allowance is gonna face in the opposite direction, so otherwise I would have too much fabric overlapping. And now I will just keep smoothing it and aligning the neckline nicely on both layers. So I will pin in here the center of the cleavage and also here these sides. These are kind of like a control part, like control points that always helps to make sure that the cleavage is gonna be nice and smooth. And then I will keep adding pins around the entire neckline. Now that everything has been pinned in place, I can go back to my sewing machine. I'll be sewing 1 centimeter away from the edge, which is the seam allowance, and I'll be using stretchy straight stitch because I want the neckline to be also a bit stretchy once the piece will be finished. Now that the pieces have been sewn together, we have to make a few adjustments around the cleavage so that when we turn the piece to the right side, that the line would be nice. So first we are going to make a cut here, very close to the point of the seam, and also here. And I'm gonna grab my zigzag scissors and I'm gonna cut the seam allowance a little bit back. And now I will turn the piece to the right side and I will shape the neckline. Now the neckline has been pinned in place. When I pinned it in place, I made sure that I rolled the fabric so that the green fabric would a little bit overlap. So when you look from the outside, you see only green. When you see from the inside, you see a tiny little edge of the green fabric. So that's what I mean. And that's why I also have to go ahead and cut here back the excess fabric when I pinned the armholes together. I like doing that before I sew in the sleeves because then I have a nice clean edge. Speaking of sleeves, I already did a little preparation. I have sewn around the edges of the sleeves with a really dense zigzag, and I was stretching the fabric out so that it would create these nice loops. This is something I have shown in my playlist for sewing beginners, so I'm not gonna go into how to do that, but I can link the video down below if you're not familiar with this technique. And before I go to the sewing machine, I will also pin in the sleeves. So I will start with the bottom. I'm simply gonna pin here the pointy end, but I should pin it in so that I would be pinning from the inside. That's always the best way how to sew in sleeves. And I will simply continue aligning the sleeve right side on right side of the green fabric, and I will be pinning it in place at an angle because while I'll be at the sewing machine, I can also sew the sleeves in place. Here is what it looks like when one of the sleeves has been pinned in place. And I will be sewing the sleeve in with stretchy overlock stitch. Now the neckline is finished. I have sewn both sleeves in, and then I folded here the seam inwards and I have sewn through the edge with the stretchy zigzag so that even the bottom would look nice. And now I have also flattened the fabric, especially the velvet. I told you, I believe, that it tends to roll around the edges, and I made sure that I would align it with the lining when I smoothened the lining according to the velvet. And now I can see that I have here this excess fabric. So before I will continue, I will just grab my scissors and cut back here the excess fabric from the lining. That's the thing, the properties of the jersey are a bit different than the properties of this velvet, because the velvet stretches only sidewards and the jersey stretches also vertically, not only horizontally. So that's a little bit different to work with. You have to keep that in mind. Now I will sew together the bottom section of the top with the top section. So I marked on the bottom section the center of the front so that I knew which part the front was, but it's actually easy to tell because when I designed this pattern I made the back a little bit longer, and by the way, this is what it looks like on the bottom. So what I will do is, this is the front, I'm just gonna turn it around to the wrong side. In the background my husky is complaining, he feels neglected. He does that a lot when I'm sewing, so I will have to go and talk to him shortly so that he would let me work. Now that Shadow calmed down, I can continue. So I will be pinning the parts together like so from the inside. I will simply sew all the layers together. That's the easiest way. You could of course also sew together only the green part with the orange part, and you could have the inside loose and sew an elastic band on it so that it would be like an inside bra, similarly to what I have done with the racerback tank top. In the racerback tank top tutorial, I will link the video down below. That might be helpful if you need the extra support. But I don't need that, I'm flat-chested, so this is for me very easy, and it's also very quick. And when I'll be done with pinning, when all the parts will be pinned together, I will simply sew them together with stretchy overlock stitch, and then I'll fold the seam to one side and I'll go through with stretchy zigzag. And here we go, the top is finished. Now that we finished both the top and the skirt, we can start working on the hat that goes with the pumpkin costume. So I have here 2 circles cut out of the dark green velvet, 2 pieces for the pumpkin leaf that will go on the hat, and I have here this shape that's gonna be the stem. I have here also this piece of warm interfacing that will go inside of the hat to make it thicker because I want to quilt it. And then I have here these stuffings. They come from an old pillow and I will use them in order to fill the stem with them. So here's what I'm gonna do. I will grab this circle, I will place it so that the right side is facing upwards. I will place the other circle on the top and I will pin the edges at an angle, and then I will sew the pieces together with a straight stitch, and I will make sure that I will leave a small section open so that I will be able to turn the circle to the right side. So that's gonna be the base of the hat. The stem, I will fold it in the middle like so, so the right side is now inside, and I will pin here these edges at an angle. And I will be sewing around the edges from here, from the top towards the bottom, and I will stop sewing where the pin is because that will make the opening a little bit bigger because I need to turn it to the right side, and that's gonna be easier when it's not so tiny, because if I would be sewing all the way to the bottom, that would be a little tricky to turn it. And we do basically the same like we do with the circles with the leaf. So I'm gonna pin it right sides inside, wrong sides facing up, and I will sew around the edges with straight stitch, and then I'll turn it to the right side. I will make sure that I leave a little section open. And another option would be to place all these pieces, let me show you. Instead of wrong sides facing up, right sides facing up, you could cut back the seam allowance and you could simply sew around the edges with a very dense zigzag. Or if you have an overlock machine, a serger, that would be also okay to use it in order to edge the outline. But I decided to do it the old-fashioned way, simply sewing around the edges and then turning it to the right side. But it is an option as well. It goes a little bit faster. You'll save yourself the turning of the pieces. So that's entirely up to you. It depends on how much work are you willing to put in. But neither of these two options is right or wrong. That's all about whatever you personally prefer, what works for you. So let's go to the sewing machine and sew around the edges with the straight stitch. Here we have the circle. I'm gonna go ahead and cut around the edge with my zigzag scissors. And now I'm gonna turn it to the right side. So always like pushing through and grabbing the opposite edge and then pushing it out. And now I'm just gonna put in this interfacing. Now that I successfully turned the circle to the right side and after I shaped the edges a little bit and inserted the warm interfacing, this is ready to be finished. I will have to stitch this together. That's the opening. I'll do that with ladder stitch. If you're not familiar with hand stitching techniques, I have several videos about that, an entire playlist. I will link it down below. And I put in these pins because I want to sew through with straight stitch in kind of a star shape. So I will make one seam like so, one will go across, and then two additional like this. So hence the pins. And then I have here the leaf. So I went ahead and cut towards the pointy edges here. And I also cut back here the pointy edge, and I also cut back a little bit of the excess fabric, and now I will turn it to the right side. So I will start here with the pointy end, and then I will push with my thumb this also through the hole. And just like with the circle, I will have to play a little bit with the edges and shape them. Here is what the leaf looks like once it's been turned properly to the right side and shaped. I put a pin here on the edge. That's where I need to stitch the opening together with ladder stitch, just like I will do on the head base. And I want to sew in 3 lines with a very dense zigzag in order to create the kind of veins that leaves have. So I will make 1 line here and here and here. And next thing is the antenna. So I will cut back here this edge like so, and here. And now I will stretch it here a little bit. I will help myself with this painting brush and turn it to the right side. By the way, if you want to learn more about sewing various shapes and how to work rounded edges or angled edges, I have a really great tutorial for that in my playlist for sewing beginners, so I can link it down below. And now I will start stuffing this with the pillow stuffings. So this is good enough. That's nicely full. I will shape the stem a little bit. And once these 2 pieces will be finished, I will simply hand stitch the stem in the center of the head base, like so. This is what it looks like once I have sewn together. So when I'm gonna be sewing the leaf on, I'm gonna sew it on a little bend like so. I'll do that with a whip stitch, and this goes into the center again with a whip stitch. And here is what the head looks like once everything has been stitched in place. I've also stitched on the bottom this hair clip so that I can secure it to my hair. Another option would be, instead of stitching a hair clip to the bottom, gluing the head to a headband with hot glue. I, however, prefer this option because it gives me a little bit more freedom when it comes to the placement on my hair. Alright, so that's how I created my pumpkin costume. This year I simply did not feel like dressing as someone, like a character from a movie or a book or a comic book. I just felt like making a timeless Halloween costume, and I find it super cute and kind of sassy. It's, you know, it's kind of almost sexy without being too revealing, so I'm definitely gonna enjoy this one. Again, the sewing pattern is available on my homepage. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's tutorial. You can let me know in the comments what are you gonna wear, or are you gonna make this costume. And if you make this costume and post photos on Instagram, please don't forget to tag me. My Instagram account is linked down below together with the link to the sewing pattern. So thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you guys very much. God bless you and see you soon. Bye.